Dan Thurman and I have a lot in common. We're both past presidents of the National Speakers Association, both Hall of Fame speakers, both members of the prestigious mastermind group called Speakers Roundtable. We've both been known to delight audiences for totally different reasons. We're both authors, and Dan's most recent are Off Balance on Purpose and Positive Chaos. We're both passionate about living our lives to the fullest. Now for the differences. The business world is taking notice of the first of a kind study, the 2023 The Impact of Chaos on the American Workforce. Dan has performed to troops on the front lines and royalty. For fun, I go to museums and shows with Susan Rowan. Dan enjoys riding a mountain unicycle in the woods. Dan cannot control himself for doing handstands whenever possible. And you will never see me pack these items in my luggage. Because unlike Dan, I will never have to call a friend and say, "You have got to tell me how to eat fire right now," to discuss how he got to where he is and what we need to know about positive chaos. Please join me in welcoming one of the nicest people in the world, Dan Thurman. Yay, Dan.
Yay, Patricia. Thank you so much. Oh, okay. We're back recording. I'm so glad for that. I love you, Patricia, and I'm so grateful for our friendship over many years and all that I have learned from you and how you've inspired me, and invitations like this one to be a part of this incredible tradition and truly legacy that is the Golden Gate Breakfast Club. In this audience, we don't only have, as previously mentioned, amazing, powerful speakers and communicators. I'm honored that you're here. But just the collective accomplishments and influence and creative contributions of this audience are truly astounding. So I humbly will present something this morning that I hope you find to be of value to you personally, but at the very least, in the spirit of Gordon's parents, I will strive to be good and have fun. So with that in mind, let me just start with this conversation about my story, about positive chaos, what that means, and all this that we're going to get into today by first talking a bit about balance. And we're going to do that right over here. You see, my friends, when we entered into this whole world of COVID uncertainty and creativity in the speaker world that suddenly went online, we created a space that would allow me to bring out my best in a way that would resonate with audiences all over the world. I got that, Steph. Just don't worry just yet. And if you would think of your own lives during that time and how all of the platforms that you thought were so stable were suddenly revealed to be precarious. The way we could get together with friends, the way these meetings happened personally versus virtually, the way you shopped, the way you ate, the way you communicated, how you traveled or worked or whatever. That was an instant where all of us knew that our foundations were less stable than we thought. And as we moved forward, because of the openness of and the connectivity of everything, the accelerance of technology, and the general unpredictability of our world, that will continue to increase. And so the question really for all of us is, how will you position yourself on top of uncertainty? Watch very closely as I will emulate that photograph you saw a bit earlier. And this is one of my favorite illustrations because it's a great way to point out, if you watch closely, I'm not balanced, I'm balancing. I'm making constant adjustments and corrections, and I'm working really hard. And after all that work and energy and effort, I'm still in the same place, and I'm just a lot more exhausted. This is how most people deal with uncertainty. When their foundations are challenged, they say, how do I protect what I have? How do I work harder to keep more of what I already know and do? And others, like you, the accomplished, the leaders, the learners, say, where's the opportunity? Because of every uncertainty creates that opportunity if you're willing to go off balance on purpose. You see, balance is never what you get. Balance is what you do. And we kind of have been sold this idea that's our goal, is to achieve balance, that if we work hard enough or smart enough or long enough, we eventually arrive at this future moment where things will simplify and even out. But that's never the case. In fact, all you ever get is the moment that you presently occupy. And so if we want to continue to grow and learn, our first commitment must be to being in the moment and being willing to be fully in, off balance, invested in what matters, invested in your values, biased toward what matters most. And I believe that these are the times right now where that is more important than ever before. So as we segue from this is the subject of my last book, we're going to revisit some of this content just a bit later. But I want to slide over to the other room. Hold on. So here we find ourselves in the classroom. If you think about it, there's 3 different spaces during this presentation. The library, where you saw me earlier, and I will be going soon, that's kind of like the heart center, if you will, the spirit center, where we can connect personally. The action room, where I just was a moment ago, and this is the classroom, where we can dive deeper into some ideas and unpack these together. So, if you think about how you get to accomplish anything and what it really means for those who succeed and how they differentiate themselves from those who don't, to me it's pretty simple. It comes down to willingness, ability, and capacity. So willingness is the answer to the question why. That's where we get our source of motivation, that purpose that we just referenced a moment ago. Why does this even matter? Why do we show up? Why do we work so hard? And are we willing to do what it takes, whatever it takes, to make something happen? Which is tricky because quite often you don't know what it's going to take, or what you thought it might take yesterday is revealed in your present moment to be completely inadequate. So we're constantly asking and then re-answering this question of willingness. And in my experience, most people are not completely honest with each other and with themselves about their actual level of willingness, which is okay. As we get older, as our environments change, we need to learn what to let go of so that we can embrace what is truly important. And then we can move to this next sphere of ability, which is the answer to that question. Well, what? If I am willing, if I know the why, then what do I need to do? What skills and knowledge must I acquire? What relationships, like those in this amazing club, can I cultivate to learn from amazing mentors and fellow friends? And then we can grow. We can grow our abilities and our skills. But there's this third piece, the capacity piece, which is the answer to that question. Well, how much? How much can you handle? How much can you take? And how comfortable are you in this mode of the uncertainty, the chaos that's coming at you, which again is bigger than it ever has been before, and we're going to break that down a little bit later. We look at things like time and money and energy and thought as finite resources, and in a sense, in some ways, they are. Yet if we learn that we can multi-purpose our time, our thought, we can connect what matters most, we can find a way to realize that our capacity can continually grow. And if we can become more comfortable with the uncertainty, the unfolding of what's happening, then we can grow that openness, that ability to continue to discover, to learn. And that's important because all that ever happens anywhere in the world is the overlap of what you're honestly willing to do, what you've developed and invested the time to actually be able to accomplish, and then the capacity within yourself or within those in your circle of influence to execute. So this is the deterministic effort model of how I go make something happen in the world. Yet we're kind of butting up against this great unknown, this uncertainty. And the reasons, again, come down to all that is uncontrollable. Like the uncertainties of our world have never been greater in many respects because of the openness of our systems, the connectedness of people and technologies and accelerants. So many divergent paths can take hold. And so we can look at this as chaos, as disorder and absolute confusion, and be in that defend mode of like, how do we prevent this, the inevitable, from overwhelming our lives? Or we can be in the discover mode, which is, okay, that there's a lot of things that are just unknowable at this time, that there's it's like a story unfolding, that we're participants in creating the story, but also like we're just enjoying it, Imagine if you couldn't enjoy a great book unless you knew the ending in advance. It doesn't work that way. We want to be surprised. Don't give me the spoilers just yet. And things that are random quite possibly could work to your advantage. Like for me, that was the origin of my journey. You see, when I was 11 years old, I was a hyperactive kid, and I needed a channel for this energy because I was constantly getting in trouble in school and at home with my sisters, and I couldn't figure out what that was until the summer of 1979 when I was at the King Richard's Renaissance Festival in Bristol, Wisconsin. Now, if you've been to a Renaissance fair, you'll know that it's like 16th century England replicated in a permanent village with the king and the queen and knights jousting on horseback and amazing artists like my mother, Diana Thurman, who is exhibiting her work there. And that's where I was when I was 11. In fact, on my 11th birthday. But you must know, or I'd love you to imagine that in the 1970s, Renaissance festivals just hit a little differently. They were so much more authentic. There were no speakers. There were no cash machines. There were no plastic cups or even name brands. The only drink that you could buy, other than the ale, was a sassafras root beer, which I've never tasted anything like it since that moment in time. But at 11 years old, I was helping my mom at these different various shows and festivals. And as a self-taught artist, one of the things she always told me was, Dan, it doesn't matter so much what you do in the world as how you do it, because any vocation can be an artistic offering. Your life, in fact, is a work of art, a creative contribution. Your thoughts, your ideas, your words are all specifically chosen thousands of times a day and are uniquely you. So take pride in how you do what you do, right? Be good, have fun. So after helping mom get set up, I started walking around the festival and taking it all in. And it wasn't long before I saw an amazing performer, a juggler, in fact, who was not only skilled but hilarious. And I watched his act 6 times in a row. At the end of the day, he called me over and he asked me, "Kid, do you have parents?" And I said, "Yeah, my mom's actually the artist up the hill." And he went, "Great, you're one of us." And then an idea clicked in his head, and he reached into his prop case and he spoke 5 words as he pulled out 3 objects. And those 5 words changed my life. Do you want to learn? Right? Do you want to learn? Which, when you think about it, that's the essence of this whole question of willingness. Do you want to learn? Do you still want to learn? What do you want to learn? How do you want to learn? And when I accepted that offer, which I never expected, by the way, I wasn't fishing for an invitation. I didn't even know that was possible. I was admiring him. You're amazing. I could never. I'm in the audience. He bridged that gap. Just as when you were a moment ago discussing the shoulders of those you stand upon because of their work or because of their influence in your life, because they saw something in you before you saw it in yourself, right? We're also close to our own strength, uniqueness. We undervalue who we are and what we have to share. And this is the power that you have at any age, at any moment, in any environment, to activate those around you simply by observing who they are and discerning what makes them unique and naming it. It's like you switch them on. I wanted to put in the time to prove he was right, and so I put in the effort, and I finally got to the point where I could keep going with 3, and almost immediately a new question came into my mind, which was what? You know it. Right? How do I do 4? I thought I was ready, and so I wanted to take on the next harder challenge, and I just figured I'd try it, and I would just squeeze it into what I was already doing. And that's when a whole new journey began. You see, when you add the 4th ball, I just try to fit it into the existing system or the existing pattern of the 3. They would collide with each other. They would hit the ground all around me, and it wouldn't work no matter how much I tried. In fact, the more I tried it, the more frustrating it became until I went back to my mentor and I asked him, why isn't this working? And he said, Dan, stop and listen. When you add the 4th ball, you need to learn a new pattern, right? So the pattern is the term jugglers use to refer to the relationship between all the objectives. Important to note, because we form patterns in our life of how we think, how we act, how we learn, how we teach, and we form methods that work, and we want to keep them there. But in order to grow, you must transcend, become willing to transcend your current patterns. So what he showed me here is he said, Dan, the 4th ball changes everything. Watch. Odd numbers cross to the opposite hands. 3, 5, 7. Even numbers, you hold it a little longer, it circles back to the same hand. It's actually 2 on this side, 2 on this side. You stagger the throws so it looks like they're crossing, but they're really not unless you're doing variations or fancier tricks. But the basic patterns don't cross. They actually stay on the same side. And when he showed me that, just like you, I was like, oh, that's good information, right? It was like I'd been to the 4-ball breakout session. So I went home and I tried it again, and this time it still didn't work because I hadn't practiced enough. I hadn't struggled enough intentionally. I hadn't become so frustrated I could start asking better questions. Like, remind me, where does that throw go exactly? And how can I practice with maybe just one hand at a time? But as I continued to practice the 4-ball juggling, I started to notice something I never expected. My 3-ball juggling was getting really, really good. And the truth is, I never got the hang of the 4 until I tried 5. If you think what you're doing now is difficult, it's probably time to try something harder. And when you do, the level you were at suddenly simplifies because now you have awareness. It makes perfect sense. And that's how we learn. That's how we grow. We move to the next level. We move to the next challenge. We say yes to the next role or responsibility, and then the change stretches you. So 5 balls goes back to this crossing pattern, but now instead of having 1 in the air at all time, I have 3 in the air at all time. So complexity increases remarkably and can overwhelm your system. However, there's some principles, there's some keys from juggling that it's just the most miraculous metaphor that has served in so many ways throughout my career. The first thing is when you think about the pattern and juggling, you have to focus at the tops. The way I used to say it is keep looking up. If you'll notice, I'm looking at the tops of the patterns. And I know that sounds very motivational, like I'm saying, stay positive, keep looking up, everybody. This isn't it. Attitude's important, but execution is key. Juggling is not about making amazing catches. It's about making increasingly better throws, right? And so you can only do that if you know where you want the throws to go, and if you're taking action and then dialing in those targets more clearly over time. So when you think about who you are, who you're becoming, how you're continuing to grow and what you're striving toward, it's all about those small, subtle adjustments as we dial in more specifically toward our ideal targets. And over time, the catches, the successes, the opportunities will likely begin to fall into your hands, into your life. And then the second thing is the more you add into your world, the faster things become, ironically, the more we must slow down. Slow down to find the spaces between the throws and catches. Because if I get it all up in the air at once, it all comes down at once and overwhelms me. But if I can slow it down, then you begin to see there is space. It's really just one thing, one throw, one input at a time, right? One of the ways I like to reference these ideas is through the 5 spheres of life. When we look at, your own life, your work, your relationships, your health, your spirit, your interests, or your passions, we might be tempted to look at those as 5 different projects, and it suggested that we compartmentalize our life and protect these against one another. That's not it. You never have enough time, and it doesn't apportion evenly. Instead, when you connect them to each other and ask, how does my work connect to the people in my life I care about? We provide for them, but we're nurturing relationships in the context of our jobs. We're helping the people we love most deeply understand why we do what we do professionally. And I call that a lifeline, the connection between the sphere. Because when challenges are at work and life is in motion, it will be stretched and tested. The lifeline is what creates the stability. Does your job, your work effort, support your desire to be healthy or challenge it in some ways, mentally or physically? And if so, how can you bring that into better alignment? Because that would be more sustainable. In our work, are we fueling our spirit and our spiritual practices? Are we interested, passionate about what we do? Are we learning about the interests of those we serve or work with? And in our other relationships, personally, are we aligned in terms of our health, our desire to grow in our spirit, and our interests and passions? Because if you want to deepen any relationship, what I've found is the quickest way to do that is to invest yourself in their passion, in their interest. So in total, there's 10 lifelines. And I know I'm moving through this quickly, but I want you to see this model, because when it's in motion, we see it's not balanced at all. There's something in your hand, other things out of your control. It's kind of all over the place. However, there's a sense of alignment. There's a sense of stability. And this is what we can do, especially in the midst of these chaotic, uncharted times in our life. So when you do that, also, you begin to see that this pattern reveals itself. And I don't know if you noticed it with the 5 balls, but it kind of comes up as an infinite loop. If you watch any one ball retracing the pattern over and over, there you go. There you see it, that infinity sign. See that? As it kind of arcs at the tops and the bottoms and through the middle. This will all make more sense in a minute. Okay, so back to the classroom. So we were talking about disorder and confusion, uncertainty and randomness, and all of this is a predicate to the conversation, which we've already really started, about positive chaos. Why did I write this book? Because I began to notice we're hearing these words all the time. The chaos of our world, the chaos of our economy, the chaos of our geopolitical environment, the immigration issues, whatever it is, it's always meant, I think, to disrupt you, to dissuade you, to lower your standards a bit and keep you in a constant state of fear. And I said, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And I began to look at what chaos really is, mathematically and scientifically, and how it's utilized, and say, wait a second, this is a tool. This is a tool we can use as well. This gentleman here, Edward Norton Lorenz, was the first to coin the phrase chaos theory. And Lorenz was a climatologist in 1962. He was trying to predict the weather, and he was also a mathematician. And so he believed that if he developed the perfect model, if he could, analyze enough data, that he could predict the weather for the foreseeable future. And he realized he really couldn't, because no matter how much he knew, those models would diverge because of a small things that he could not measure, or that he could not yet adequately understand. He called this the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is the idea that a butterfly flapping its wings in one part of the world could theoretically start a hurricane hundreds of miles away. Well, this became a very trendy idea and was quickly adopted in population management and weather and information technology and countless other disciplines, wherever this uncertainty, this unknowability existed as it does today. And then he started to say, well, I want to know what randomness looks like. And so he generated random differential equations, solved them, and started plotting their answers. And it began to look like this. They were infinite loops, repeating over and over again on various planes. Interestingly enough, looking like the wings of a butterfly, and also like that juggling pattern we saw a moment ago. Infinite loops repeating on various planes that are unknowable in any specific sense, but reveal patterns over time. So 2 things here I really want to highlight for you. The small things, the inputs. Little things change everything more than ever before. This means your inputs, your words, your decisions, your very presence, the way you show up in life, how you interact with people, what you choose to say or do, all of that will amplify in hugely unknowable ways, but that will model the intention that you put into what you do. So it's never been more important, I believe, that our motivations are clear, our values are high, and we are showing up in our world with a creative, courageous way of saying, like, I want to do something new and different and powerful. And then patterns emerge, and the more you understand the patterns, the more you can shape them as well. So, in general, this is how most people perceive chaos. The negative version. It's challenging. It's hectic. I feel anxiety. Anxiety is at an all-time high. I feel overwhelmed, and I'm constantly stressed out because I don't know what's coming. I can't predict it. And it's like you're constantly trying to play defense against that which you cannot know. So this is where most people live. Fripp, you mentioned the survey that we did, or the study that we did relative to this work. It was very comprehensive, and it revealed some very disturbing information that I didn't even necessarily expect to hear. For instance, 1 out of every 4 working Americans thinks about quitting at least once every single day. Think of that. 6% of working Americans think about suicide at least once every single day. People are very, very concerned for themselves, but really more for those they love, for the people they care about. And their financial concerns top the list. So in an environment where we face inflationary challenges and cost of living and interest rates, all of this. So this is important to know, because the people you interact with, the people you love, the people you care about are operating from this very defensive and fearful state of being, okay? But it doesn't have to be that way. So in the book, I talk about these 5 specific elements and their transformations to a different acronym, which is more positive chaos. This is going on offense. This is saying I'm not playing defense against the world. I'm creating chaos where I go by choosing things that are challenging. Same word, right? But it's the intentional struggle, like we referenced over there. It's about showing up saying, how do I give more? And what am I learning? And because I can't predict what's happening, how can I create more certainty by saying, well, on the other side of it, I will change. I'll know more. I'll have this new skill, right? Intentional challenge. From hectic, we move to healthy, which is this idea that I will prioritize my mental health and my physical health, and I will learn to expand my spaces between the throws, between all that's happening, so that I can elevate my response to the world. Instead of anxiety, which is the fear of the future, I'm looking up. I'm looking up toward what's happening that's amazing, or that I stand for, or that I want to contribute and create. And this is a cool one, my favorite actually, from overwhelming, which is, oh my gosh, it's too much, it's now or never. We move to the idea that no, it's just ongoing. These are just repeating patterns over and over again. And really what you look at, and while we say it, this is unprecedented, it's not. It's a new version of something you've encountered in your past. And if you look for those patterns, and if you recognize something has happened at least 3 times in your life in different ways, it's a pattern. And the only way to change that pattern is to do something different, right? This is why the whole notion of I'll change as soon as I handle what's on my plate never works, because the patterns you're using to handle what's on your plate is creating a future amplified version of that, right? So we've got to be courageous here. And then you begin to see the patterns, the synergies that are created by how things fit together. So that, in a nutshell, is positive chaos. And when you're operating in that mode, and we're about to segue into Q&A here, I'll just give you one more little demo. Even in the greatest uncertainties of life, even when, the challenges are heavy duty and real and intimidating, we can say, you know what? My past has prepared me for this moment. If I can learn more carefully. The first time I tried these, I taped the blades so that I didn't have to think about cutting myself. And then prioritize what's important. With these, the goal isn't simply to make a catch, but more specifically to catch the handle. And that's a different goal. And then let go. The moment one of them's out of my hand, it's also out of my control, right? In other words, you must let go to get a grip, to grasp reality and participate, to respond. So here we go. If I let go, boom, you begin to see it's not that overwhelming. It's just one thing at a time. And there's space. There's more space than you might anticipate between the throws and catches. In fact, I can use that space in various ways once I can slow it down, look up, and make it happen. All right. So I know that we've started a conversation. I hope that has inspired you, and I want to leave plenty of time for our conversations to unfold, including the story that Patricia asked about learning to eat fire. I know you want me to get to that one. So I'll tell you that story while we're getting the queue going on questions. So I'm a firm believer that, I guess I've always embraced this idea of say yes to the opportunity and let it change you. And so shortly after I moved from Chicago to Atlanta, this was 1984, I showed up here. I didn't know anybody in school. I started performing at my high school and then at Six Flags, and then I met some agents and I cold called various people in the Atlanta area, started to build a little network of business. My parents, in probably what was the greatest marketing close of all time, said, Dan, you're doing well with your entertainment world, this business here. I'll bet if you paid for your own education at college, it'll be that much more meaningful to you. And I was like, okay, sure, I can do that. And so I got a business degree at the University of Georgia, and I was building my own business and listening to speakers on tape and learning so much about personal development while I was going to school. And that was my upbringing. But during this time, one particular agent I had not worked with asked me to be a juggler at a Polynesian party. And I said, sure, I juggle fire. That's what they wanted me to do. I was like, I've been juggling fire since I was 12, no problem. And then they called me back and they said, I'm sorry, Dan, we got to cancel this. They don't want a fire juggler, they want a fire eater. And I said, no problem, I do that too. I did not do that too. But I had a friend in Chicago, my mentor, who did know how to eat fire. And so I called him and I said, Mike, I need you to teach me how to eat fire over the phone. And so that's what we did. And it was quite the experience. It worked out very well. And not only did I do the gig and do the engagement successfully, I also had an incredible trick for parties at college. So who has a question? And how are we managing this? Carl, is that you?
Yes, that's me. And first up, we have Kathy Somerville.
Yeah, good morning.
Hey, Kathy.
And thank you so much, Dan. That was not only inspiring, but extremely it's longer lasting than inspiration. It sets a course. It sets a course. And I just want to thank you for that. And thank you for putting your website in there, because I'd like to be able to contact you and tell people about you. And because I think that you are You're an idea whose time has come to move to the forefront rather than just be a thought leader, which I love thought leaders, but it's time to be a task doer. And so I just love what you have to say. And the only question I have, because that's what I want, is does that make you a bulldog or one of those bumblebee things? What is it in Georgia? What?
We're Bulldogs.
Okay,
We say go Dogs, and
Yeah.
much better football team than Tech. Although my sister and her husband, she was a Bulldog and he was a Yellow Jacket. So
Oh, that's right. Yellow Jacket. I wanted
they
to say
found a way to
bumblebee.
work it out, though.
Great. Completely amazing. I appreciate the work that you're putting out into the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Next, we have Janelle Barlow.
Hey, Dan, thank you.
Nice to see you, Janelle. I was so excited you're on the call. Yes. Thank you.
I remember watching you run across the stage and saying, well, now maybe if I did this and I put one foot forward and the next foot forward, and then I have to twist my body. And then
Yes.
everybody was like, oh, is he going to do it? Come on. And then you did it. And it was so spectacular. I'll never forget that. I do have a question. This whole notion about 3 balls and then jump up to 5 balls to learn how to do 4 balls. I was just wondering, if in business, when managers are attempting to teach their staff new skills, new ability to deal with things. For example, I work now just exclusively in the field of complaint handling. And the big problem is that they get these nasty people calling and then they want to quit because they can't deal with that. And I was just wondering if you could just imagine a little bit how you would go about, because I think that these people have to learn how to deal with the extremes of customer anger, to learn how to deal with the day-to-day regular irritation that is there, because almost everybody's irritated when they call with a complaint. But what do you think about that? That would, to really push them with extreme examples that aren't real, that you're making them up. What do you think about that to deal with chaos?
I like that idea a lot. The other piece of it that's really important from the brain science, though, Janelle, is in order for this to really work at its zenith, it's a voluntary challenge, right? So you have to have some buy-in and acceptance from the participants that we're going to create a conversation first around this notion of how harder things make you better. And rather than just throwing things at you and hoping that you survive, what we're going to ask you to do is to invite some things that are ridiculously difficult, just in a way to have some fun and to reveal something to you that might be useful. And so if you create that acceptance piece, now what you have is okay, I brought this on myself. It's intentional. And then you create a conversation in an environment where the learning is shared. But it's very important. Like I often teach a room full of executives how to juggle, or teach them a skill like this that is really fun. It's also frustrating in some ways, but the frustration and the public scrutiny of I'm embarrassing myself in public goes away because A, everybody's doing it, and B, it's not necessarily tied to my job evaluation. Right. So it would be nice to separate that in some way from the actual work, but then also to say, well, what has been the hardest thing that you've encountered from a real customer, and what has that taught you? And hear those ideas shared. That also creates a way for them to take ownership of what they've already learned, but they might not be, they might have just thought, I endured that. They didn't necessarily register that they changed.
So you're talking about creating a little bit of distance between what they're doing and what really happens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so important. Objectivity is even in the midst of the challenge, the ability to, I call it zooming out, and to be able to say, I'm going through this, but there's also the part of me, and maybe this is something that was cultivated as a performer at a Renaissance festival when you're doing 6 shows a day and you've got audiences in the round, and there's this awareness of what I'm doing, and I'm in what I'm doing, but I'm also aware of how it's all being perceived, and I'm watching it objectively from a distance too. And so that's that dual mind of being
I wonder if you could accomplish that.
The observer.
I wonder if you could accomplish that with videos, and I'll stop there with my questions. Yeah, if videos, if you could watch this, somebody really getting ripped to pieces by a customer, and that you're not experiencing it, you're watching it on video, and then
Yeah.
you tear it apart. What would I do?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I would realize, it's a hard job what they're doing, but also
Oh, it's very
that,
hard.
that customer who's calling in is having a very real human experience. They're not operating from a state of, let me see if I can work this out. If they're already in that frenzied, agitated state, they're very likely, going through something very emotional. And
Mhm.
so it's important to respond with empathy and with care as you do all of that. And from a place of, here's a human being who needs help, So
Yeah.
that helps create some
Thank
objectivity,
you.
I would assume. Sorry, I know we have other questions too.
Next up is Betty.
Hi, thank you so much for an absolutely mesmerizing. I have taken so many notes on what you've said. I've often said that the word chaos used to be or is an Asian symbol, Chinese or whatever. And if you look at it one way, you interpret it as chaos and challenges. And if you turn it upside down, look at it as an opportunity. So I've always come at it from that perspective, but I loved your analysis of the challenging part of it, chaos and the letters, and then the uplifting. I just thought that was the best I've heard. So thank you. And an excellent presentation as well with your 3 different rooms and your analogies. I have a question about the juggling of the balls. Did I understand that if you increase from 4 to 5, then you come back down to 4, it's easy? Well, obviously it's easier, I guess, but the purpose is to create more space. Could you just elaborate on that again? I missed that.
Well, yes, it creates, and there's different ways you can do it. I just did a video that released yesterday on different ways to try something harder. But that's really one of the stickiest ideas in my presentation and has been for decades. And it's the way musicians practice something very slowly and then accelerate the tempo, and eventually you'll reach a place. I know Fripp's thinking about her brother right now, where you're playing beyond your capability, and then when you slow it down to what was difficult, it suddenly seems easier, as long as you're maintaining your proper technique. But we can make things harder because we add weight, and we add a physical weight, or we add, that's how a gym works. You rip your muscle by adding weight, and then it grows back stronger. We add distance and to build endurance. We add complexity to reveal greater simplicity and patterns, and to help us understand how much of that complexity is really necessary versus how much of it is self-imposed. We often create complexity for ourselves, either because of the unwillingness to shed old habits and ineffective patterns. And sometimes we add complexity intentionally because we set higher standards. And so all of that's important to understand. But I think it's true regardless that voluntary difficulty creates simplicity. Like when you take the harder job, when you take a higher level of responsibility, when you have more kids, or when you have a kid, or when you have a relationship even, it's like it makes things challenging in different ways.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, next is Susan.
Dan, mesmerizing, took many notes. I have a question that's a little different than everyone else's, which is, were you a bulldog gymnast?
Interesting. I was not a gymnast on the competitively. I did some of that in high school. I hung out with the cheerleaders a bit and would work out in their gym with them. But I was working my way through school. So I didn't have the time for the extracurriculars. I only went to 2 football games my entire college career, both my freshman year, because I was usually gigging in Atlanta, an hour away, for corporate events, for festivals, for you name it. I was doing a lot of driving. And usually when I was driving, I was listening to Zig Ziglar, Wayne Dyer, Brian Tracy's insight into, all the Tony Robbins. I was feeding my head with this knowledge, not because I wanted to do that one day. I didn't even know that was possible yet, but I just was learning. I'm grateful in retrospect. I did not take my gymnastics to a higher level through college because my physicality, my body was not destroyed. My body remained strong. And I'm 56 next month, right? And so people ask me sometimes, they say, Dan, how do you keep doing this? Well, the reason I keep doing it is because I keep doing it. I've never stopped, and someone told me that early on, is like, as long as you keep these skills in your life, they will always be there for you. And so I take that to heart. And for me, what I do professionally is the connection of those 5 spheres: my work, my relationships, my health, and my passions, and my spirit. It's all that all together. And what a gift to be able to present that to the world.
Yeah, you are a gift. I'll share this one story. My college roommate had twins and then found out she was pregnant. And what she realized is, after twins, one was a piece of cake.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Thank you. This was great.
All right. Thank you, Susan. Tracy.
Thank you, Carl. Dan, we appreciate you tremendously for being here. Can you take us behind the scenes and tell us about your 3 rooms? For those of us who are trying to make Zoom more interesting, you have set new standards for all of us.
Right. Well, I would say that being on camera is a skill in and of itself. We've all had to learn that. And to me, the most important thing about being on camera is that you, and I learned this from Chad Hymas, who's just so brilliant at emoting to a lens. As you're looking at the camera, but you're not looking at the camera. You're looking through the lens and into the eyes and into the soul of the person on the other side. So there has to be this eye connection that happens between you and the camera, and a sense of empathy. In terms of the duality, we use a switcher. Stephanie's in the room with me. Stephanie is my amazing assistant for almost 15 years.
Wow.
And she is, an integral part of our business. She handles my booking. She handles my travel. She handles my life, and watches our dogs when we go out of town. She's like everything. And she's also on camera on the switcher. So she's switching between the cameras. I'm not doing that. And every camera is intentional, because for the low angle with the juggling, I would say for other speakers who want to create at least some variety, I would have 2 sets. I would have some place where you sit and really connect, and then a place where you can be up and moving, because you have different energy, you have different movement when you're standing than when you're sitting. And so that gives some reason, but then you'd have to have a reason to change, because there's a something you're referencing, or a flip chart or something like this that you're working through. And so don't do it just because you think it's cool. Do it because it serves a purpose. And that's kind of my approach to all of the skills. Even from the beginning, I said, I have all these entertainment abilities, which I've cultivated over years. I want to use them, but not in a way that ever upstages my message.
Yeah.
And so for me, the way I think it really works is it makes it stickier, it makes it more memorable, and people will, remember something they experienced in the moment, but then connect it back to what we said and talked about. So in terms of microphone, I have a wireless microphone that's flowing through. I could go into great detail. We could flip. It's hard for us to show you this now because all the cameras are pointing at me. Yeah, but it's pretty cool. I would say we could show this one.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, she actually pulled it all the way back. So there you go. So here's me over here. And so this room is about 25 feet square. The ceilings at peak are about 15 feet high, which give me capabilities. In fact, there's actually one other trick you didn't get to see, is that sometimes when I'm back in this room and Stephanie zoomed in and I'm talking about inviting intentional challenges, I'll say, you never know where the next challenge is going to come from. And we actually have a rope that drops from the ceiling. And then I climb this rope as we roll to a video or something like this. But you could zoom back out again and then pan up, and you'll see, we've got the walls painted in different colors for different sets. This is an exterior garage at our office, 2-car garage that we finished pre-COVID, we created a video space for this room. Then during COVID, we flipped it into a broadcasting studio, probably in about a month. We were really early on the train. So
Thank you.
hope that helps.
It's inspiring. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And before I go on to the next person, I just want to give a shout out to Stephanie. I worked for years backstage and behind the camera, and Stephanie is awesome. And the Stephanies never get enough credit out there. Thank you for mentioning her.
Absolutely.
That's fabulous. Yes. Yes, Fripp.
I told everybody you were one of the nicest people I've ever met. Will you please tell them the story about getting your mother-in-law? Remember that story?
I do, of course. We lost our cameras. Are we still on? Can you hear
You're
me?
on.
Okay,
You're
good.
on. Yes.
Oh, we lost our switcher, so I can't see you. So, well, my wife was. We love my mother-in-law. Her name's June Procter. She was so dear to us, and especially to my wife. And she had come to our house and stayed with us for a period of time, and then went back and had a relationship where she was with a gentleman for a while, and these things were working out. She was in probably her mid-70s at this time, and my wife was out of town on vacation, and she was actually at a retreat in Paris. And again, I called June. I talked to her, and she said to me, you know, Dan, because I'd always told her, if at any point in your life you want to come live with us, I hope you will. Just know that I want that for you. Know that I'd love to have you in our home. And so she called me during that period of time when my wife happened to be out of town, and she said, Dan, I think I'm getting at that point in my life where it might be very nice to be closer to you, and if that offer still stands, I'd like to come live with you. And we could talk about that when my wife got back from France. And I said, or we could do it before she gets home from France, and you could be here to surprise her. And so while my wife was out of town, I flew to Oklahoma, loaded up my mother-in-law, drove her across country, and moved her in so that she was already living with us when my wife got home.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right. Gordon Hill has been waiting patiently to ask you a question. Gordon, you're on.
Thank you. Two things. First off, Dan, if my mother was alive and heard you use her 5 words, be good and have fun, she would send you one of her unbelievable lemon meringue pies.
Oh, my goodness.
But I've been around a long time. You're 56. I've got 30 years on you.
Oh, hey, man. I'm glad you got the note on the.
Oh, yeah.
Good to see you.
I'm
Good
here
to see you.
because of Patricia. I had the same experience watching your program that I think every speaker would like to have, but is troubled by. And that is, I couldn't keep my attention on what you were saying. I kept thinking about other things. In particular, when you mentioned random, the first thing that came to mind was James Joyce's view of an epiphany, something that happens that causes you to lose all focus on whatever else is going on. And it was repeated again when the rope dropped. My question is, do you consider those types of very important psychological effects in putting your programs together?
I do. That's a great question, Gordon. And what happens is over time, you discover them by accident, and then you realize how powerful they are, and you learn different ways to use them. And the other tricky thing about what you're mentioning is that epiphany moment where I become distracted and can't hear what's next because you've caused me to think about something different. It's different for everyone at different times because there's always, and that's what you want, I think. What you want is for your audience you want to disrupt their normal expectation, create a sense of interruption to their, to their life, to their world, to their mode of thinking, and so that they will be different in some ways. It's the only way we learn. It's the only way we retain information is not just to hear it, but to have an experience with the information. And so by the end of my presentation, it's less important to me that you remember everything I said, and more important to me that you remember something that was especially meaningful to you, and that you never hear a particular concept the same way again. And that for me is balance. Two things. I want people to remember balance is not what you get, it's what you do. And so when anyone ever in the future says, oh, we need to just achieve balance, I wish my life were balanced, you'll think about that differently. And then now chaos. I want chaos. I want people to be alert to the idea when they hear chaos in the world. Why is that coming at me now? And how am I hearing it? And is that accurate? So I hope that was helpful.
All right, Michael. You're muted, Michael.
Okay, unmute. I have a juggling question. I'm reasonably good at juggling 3 balls, and I think it's really helped my tennis game when I'm at the net, but eye-hand coordination. But it's not perfect. Now, what can I do? Just practice on the toss, just to make sure I'm tossing it in the right place.
If you so by the way, juggling is an amazing skill to learn for anyone. And Stephanie, if you could just throw me a 3 balls, or even 1 is good for now. I just did a program in Dubai with Scott Halford, who's an amazing speaker, friend, a neuroscientist. And so it was all about mental agility and brain science. And what we really looked at is the scientific literature around juggling and how it activates your right brain, left brain. And so it's not just good for tennis, but it's really amazing to keep your brain healthy throughout your life. You always start with 1, and you want to keep it parallel to your body. So a lot of the mistakes that people make when learning to juggle 3 is the balls arc back toward them like this, which we don't want to do. We want to keep it side by side. And so you think about targets, specific targets above your head, and we're launching toward those targets. In fact, I'll come here real quick. This will be better. So if you look from here, my targets are up here, right? I'm looking at that level. It's one, but if you look from the side, it's completely even, because when I go to 4, if I'm doing this, it's just too much complexity. It's overwhelming. I can't handle it. So what we're trying to do is reduce the margins for the errors by keeping the throws accurate, which you only do by really drilling 1 over and over again. Always go back to 1. You cannot overdo this, okay? And just try to make them more precise. All right.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, and Bill Buchanan.
Good morning, Dan. Bill Buchanan. Like Gordon, sitting here listening to your presentation, thinking about some ancillary thought, and that, in my case, it was that I've kind of reduced my life to the mantra mens sana in corpore sano, the Roman standard of sound mind and sound body. And that's pretty simple. Yours is more complex, obviously. Your approach to life is more complex, but it also, I think the thing that attracted me about your presentation was the word chaos. And as you were speaking, I'm thinking back about certain stages of my life where I was a Marine infantry officer, for instance. Every day we planned to avoid chaos. And of course, the old saying is in battle, the first thing to go is your plan, right? So whether it was in the FBI or whatever, we always planned to avoid chaos. Now it happened, but then here I'm going to segue over to I'm an avid outdoorsman. Anybody in the club will tell you that. So I wrote a book one time that had a chapter where I'm up on a mountain up in Northern California, sitting there by myself. It's a solo trip with my bird dog. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm looking around thinking, what if I was a computer program? And my boss came to me and he said, I want you to program the world. I'm looking around at meadows, forests, a lot of interesting geology. The sun's just coming up. The natural world is in sync, in balance. The chaos comes from guys like me, who sort of think. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know what I was thinking of as I'm tracking your presentation. The other thing I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say on that, think about how that's also that same conversation about determinism, human free will versus order versus, the pure determinism is if I knew all the data, then there would be no randomness. I could tell you exactly what's going to happen. And there's some of that happening now with AI and with this whole notion of with enough processing power, humans will be absolved of making any decisions or any choices in life, right? And so, then what do we become? What do we become without challenge, without decision? It's the same conversation. Yeah. But we're ultimately, what I believe is we're not programmable creatures. We're spiritual creatures. That's
say that word again. We're what kind of creatures?
We're spiritual beings. We're souls.
Spiritual, yeah, right. I agree. Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking about as you were presenting was, when is he going to talk about this term that I couldn't define? It's a couple years old. Creative destruction.
Yes.
Is that part of your presentation somewhere along the way?
Yes, definitely. I think it's definitely in my book. I have a positive disruptions, creative disruptions, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you. Amazing.
All right. And we're going past time. If anyone wants to stay on, Dan, can you stay with us for a little bit longer?
Of course.
All right. And I know Patricia has to head out to the airport. So if you need to drop, go ahead and drop, and we'll just continue here. Janice, you have a question?
Hi, Dan. I knew I would enjoy your presentation, but I didn't realize just how much. And there's so many different things I could talk about and ask you, but I'm going to ask you a speaker question, and that is, what do you do in a live stage to create the various changes and modalities and excitement that you do in your home, your garage studio?
Isn't that interesting? Because when COVID hit, the fear and the question was, oh my gosh, I hope we can replicate at least some of the stage dynamics in the studio. And it flips, and you're like, well, how do you pull off studio dynamics and TV magic on stage?
Right.
It's just two different modes, right? And so my stages, I usually request a platform that's 32 feet wide, which gives me the parameters to tumble across the stage. I set that up at the beginning of my presentation as a means for, it's kind of a false start, and I get the audience clapping. It's very, very intentional and connected to the message, but I tumble across the stage. There's a lectern on stage that I utilize that for the handstand. And I have props within the lectern and props that are hidden in different places on the stage, which I pull out. I also have some audience environment activities that I do either with the full audience or with a audience member on stage with me, which is very powerful. And that's a whole, a very classic technique of using a volunteer. That volunteer then becomes the audience's representation, every man, every woman, represented on stage, and they're empathizing with their experience. And so when you're having a very personal experience with one person, you're effectively reaching everyone. And so I'm quite good at that and use that in different ways as well.
Thank you so much. I'd love to chat with you sometime about some ideas I have.
Call me anytime.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Janice, just tumble on over, and you'll have a good conversation.
I'll be doing hip circles.
There you go. Beautiful. Christine would like to ask a question.
Okay, thank you. It has been an absolute privilege to listen to you and to watch you today, because you're multidimensional in your communications. You show us how things can happen and how they can be, and how challenges can be opportunities. You've lived that apparently all your life. And my question would be, it's a very hard thing to find a question for you, but if you were to give a piece of advice to someone who is becoming vintage at this point, but trying to find out options and opportunities to do more things that are challenging, is there a single kind of piece of advice or suggestion that you might have for making that turn and going into it? Would it be to read something you've published? Any suggestion you might have? And the comment is, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation today.
Oh, thank you. You're very welcome. I mean, my question would be to say, let's flip that and say, what is it that's only possible now for you to learn because of all the other experiences that you've had? Or what is it that's only possible for you to teach now because of all the other experiences that you've had? You know, there's such a unfortunate stigma on age, longevity within our culture that really saddens me. You know, even within an environment where you're like joining NSA when I was in my mid-20s, I never once thought, that's the National Speakers Association, never once thought, well, this organization must change for me and for my generation to make it more relevant. It's like, no, what a privilege that I can talk to these people who understand life and legacy and are so much further down that journey in many ways than I am, and how cool that they invite me to be in my company. So my thought is that there's people who feel that way at any age, and you just need to find them. And it's a journey of learning which involves both what's new to you, because trust me, you're so much more. None of us ever learn at all. We never run out of disk space. And more to teach. And when you teach something you know, you learn it more deeply, because you have to prescribe structure and language around something that just kind of maybe showed up in your life over the years. But when you have to create a system to teach it, then you really learn it, you know? And so I'm kind of at that stage now where I too, even at my age, I'm thinking, where's my next passion? Because frankly, you know, the things that about this business that used to thrill me don't quite thrill me the same way, you know? So I think we'll never run out of that question.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Dan, I have to tell you, when you did your last bit with what were they? The
knives?
I was thinking, thank God he didn't use 5.
That would be tricky. I've never practiced 5 knives. So
no, don't do it, please.
Maybe I should.
Find another passion.
All right. Janelle, I'm sorry, Janelle, before you go, we have Antonio.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Dan. Dan, I saw your picture and I thought, this guy's picture is so serious. Will he be entertaining? And then I thought, then of course you were incredibly entertaining, but I thought, will he get to a point at some point during this approach here? And then you got to a point, and I thought, well, will this point be profound? And then you made a profound point, and I thought, will it change me in what I do? And the answer is yes. Everything, yes. Everything, yes. I just want to thank you for your effort, for your thoughtfulness, for your attention, for your care. You put so much into this effort. I just want to say how much deeply I appreciate what you did. It's a profound change. Your efforts were not wasted. And you brought so much joy and meaningful insights to me. So I just want to tell you thank you and bravo to you on an incredible, fully holistic, encompassing experience. So thank you so very much.
Wow.
And now
thank you all.
Back to you, Janelle.
2 quick things. First of all, the Chinese word wei ji, wei means means crisis, and ji means opportunity. So it's not upside down. It's really 2 characters together that have 2 different meanings. That's what that is. Somebody said turning them upside down gives you a different. You don't turn Chinese characters upside down. That's not how it works. Anyway, I have a question. So the question is about chaos at different times in our life. I mean, when we're little, we're learning how to deal with the chaos of just learning to walk. learning to talk, learning. And then in school, we have all different kinds of chaos opportunities that come to just about everybody, because we can all relate to them. Pretty much, we can all relate to these situations. And then we get into our work, and the same thing, they come along. And then as you get 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and now 81, where I am now, and what's the chaos? I wondered if anybody's done any work on, I'm trying to think in my own life, I'm certainly experiencing chaos. I'm losing my hearing. That's really making me adjust to the world in a different way. And I'm just wondering if you know if anybody's really been looking at this whole piece of chaos for, I think when you're in your 80s, you can be considered old. So what goes on in our older years that's different, say, even from you in your 50s or somebody in their 60s or 70s? I'm experiencing it. Lots of different things happening. Not good, most of them.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting thought, and it kind of the bigger level concept is that it's all relative. Like chaos, what I call chaos might be completely comfortable for you. Or I talk to a lot of leaders and thinkers who say, I thrive in chaos. I have to have chaos in my life in order to help me focus, in order to help me discern what's reality. I love to be so stimulated. But yeah, I was thinking when you mentioned age, the health-related chaos, the idea of feeling, of continuously finding, as Christine pointed out, like the appropriate challenge, or the sustaining purpose. A lot of people, like, we just moved my wife's Aunt Ruth to Georgia. She's now in a different living environment than she was for all of her life, and she's learning, making new relationships and all of this. But what my perspective has been from the well-adjusted older people that I know is that they don't let the little things bother them nearly as much. Yeah, but that's interesting.
That's some of it. And many of the small things bother me even more, because I'm thinking, what a waste of time to have these small things. Yeah. But see, when we look back at a 3 or 4 or 7 or 8 or 12 or 13-year-old person, we went through that. So we have some understanding of it. But when you get older, you're moving into a space that you have not yet experienced. And so it's like you're inventing the space of chaos for yourself. And it would be, I don't know how to go about it. Timelines, I think, are interesting, but I was just wondering if there's any people who are working in looking at.
Not that I know of. It's an interesting space.
Yeah, because I think there's a big market for it. Because I'd like to be able to manage my chaos as I get older.
Yeah, I'll think about that and let you know.
Okay, hopefully before I die, huh?
Okay.
I think Christine, were you trying to get a question in as well? And then Glenn, I see.
A very, very, very quick comment, and just to pass on something positive back to you for all the wonderful messages you've given, Dan, to all of us. I just learned recently from a friend, I speak lots of languages. This is not what about I speak. It's about something that I want you to think of now and then. In Turkish, there's a way of saying goodbye that they say güle güle. It's like G-U-L-E, and it just means go happy, happy, or smiling, smiling. And I learned that recently. I don't speak Turkish fluently. I speak a lot of languages, but that's one as a message. When I've taught people to say güle güle, just go happy, happy, smiling, smiling. There are a lot of things in what you shared that are challenges and are answers and are questions, but I think everyone's going to go away from this meeting with the feeling that they've learned something and will have something positive to take with it. So I thought I'd leave you with something that you may or may not already know, which is güle güle. I hope you've gotten something positive from here, and will also go out and share it, continue to share what you do in the world. I hope I will have the opportunity to read and see and hear more of you. Güle güle.
Okay.
And Claudette,
and Claudette, do you have a question?
I don't actually have a question, but I do have a comment based on everything I've been listening to. Wonderful presentation, by the way. But as somebody was talking about chaos when they were young, but they didn't have it now, or they do have it now. I remember how chaotic it was to raise children. And now I watch my daughter raising children, and it doesn't look quite as chaotic to me as it probably feels. One of the things I found as I'm approaching it.
Claudette, are you there? I think we've
frozen.
lost her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
Oh, well.
unfortunate. I think she was coming
Yeah.
up on a really, really brilliant point there.
Yeah. Well, then, if there are no more questions, Dan, thank you so much for your time and effort this morning. Patricia promised this would be good, and you delivered. Well done. Thank you. And
Absolutely.
right. And everybody, there we go.
There you go. A little more complexity for you. And as we look to the future, I hope our paths will connect live and in person one day.
Very good. And everybody go happy, happy, smiley, smiley.
Oh wait,
And
Claudette's back.
Are you what? Sorry?
Claudette's back. Claudette, can you unmute?
Oh, there you go,
please,
Claudette.
And
Yeah.
try your question again.
I just wanted to say, first I started to say it when I think we were disconnected, that one of the things I love about this group is there's a lot of older people in it still functioning very well with the chaos lives. And when we start to think about how much chaos we have because we've never experienced old age, it's the same level of chaos we had when we'd never experienced young age. So taking a lot of the hints that you gave us in your presentation about being present and looking out for creating something out of the chaos positively, I think that would help for those of us who are facing the challenges that we are now facing. I think there's a lot in your presentation already for those of us who are probably vintage, I think somebody called it. And I really want to thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Right.
Claudette.
Okay.
This
Well,
is
thank you again, Dan. Thank you again.
I promise next time I'm out there, I'll try to get together with some of you, and we'll have a little live and in-person session.
That would be fabulous. Please, please, please.
Okay, good. All right.
All right.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Go out, everybody, today and create a little bit of positive chaos. Okay.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, everybody.
Good.